So this video is a quick review on adding and subtracting fractions. The most important thing you need to remember when you add or subtract fractions is you need to make a common denominator. So what that means is you have to find a common multiple for all of the denominators of the fractions that you're adding or subtracting before you can bring them together. Okay, so let's see some examples to see how this is done. Okay, so my first example, I have 1/2 plus 2/5. Okay, so like I said, before I can bring those fractions together, I have to make a common denominator. So I'm looking at 2 and 5, and I'm looking for a common multiple of 2 and 5. And to make your life easier, you should probably look for the lowest common multiple, or the lowest common denominator, so you have less reducing to do in the end. So I have 2 and 5. My common multiple there would be 10. So I know I get 10 if I multiply 2 by 5 and 5 by 2. Okay, whatever I do to the denominator in a fraction, I must also do to the numerator to keep it equivalent. So that's how I'm going to get equivalent fractions. So this changes, I change both fractions, so 1/2 becomes 5 over 10. I multiply 1 times 5 is 5, and 2 times 5 is 10. Plus 2 over 5 becomes 2 times 2 is 4, plus 5 times 2 is 10. So now I have the fractions both out of 10, and I can bring them together. So all I do is I add the numerators together, so 5 plus 4 is 9, and then I keep the denominator the same, so 9/10. So 1/2 plus 2/5 is 9 over 10. Okay, let's see another example. So if I have negative 5 over 8 plus 3/4. So again, don't worry about that negative sign for right now. What we want to focus on is making a common denominator. So my denominators are 4 and 8, and I need to think what's my common lowest common multiple or least common denominator. So one thing you should do also is to always look to see if you can change one of the denominators into the other by multiplying by something. So I know that I can multiply 4 by 2 to get 8, so that saves me from having to change the other fraction. I only have to change one fraction in this case. Okay, so I still have negative 5 over 8 plus 6 over 8. Okay, and again, you just bring the numerators together and the denominators stay the same. So I have negative 5 plus 6 is 1 and over 8. Okay, so you need to remember some integer rules as well when you're doing operations with fractions. Okay, the last example here, I have 9 plus negative 1/3. Okay, so again, forget about that negative sign and let's just focus on denominators. So I know the denominator of any whole number is 1. Okay, so I can rewrite the whole number as a fraction, and then I'm looking for a common denominator of 1 and 3. Well, I know that I can multiply 1 by 3 to get 3, so I'm going to change 9 over 1. I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 3. So here I get 9 times 3 is 27 over 3 plus negative 1/3. So again, all you're doing here is you are bringing together the numerators, so 27 plus negative 1 would be 26 over 3. And you should always look to see if you can reduce your answer as well. I can't. 26 does not divide by 3, and I'm not going to change it into a mixed number. I'm going to leave my answer as an improper fraction in this stage because it's just neater. Okay, so let's see some examples with subtracting fractions. So if I have 7 over 9 minus 1/3, again, I'm just looking for a common denominator. So I know that if I multiply 3 by 3, I will get a common denominator of 9. So the first fraction stays the same. I have 7 over 9 minus 3 over 9. Okay, so then I just subtract the numerator. So 7 minus 3 is 4 over 9. Can I reduce that anymore? No, so it would just stay like that. Okay, this next one, if I have negative 15/2 minus 1/4. Okay, again, don't worry about all the negatives in there, just look for a common denominator. So if I multiply the first fraction by 2 on the top and the bottom, I'll get my common denominator of 4. So I have negative 30 over 4 minus 1 over 4. And again, so now I have negative 30 minus 1 more, so I get negative 31 over 4. And again, I can't reduce that. I would just leave it as is because 31 is a prime number. Okay, and the last one here, I have 2/3 minus negative a half. Okay, so looking for a common denominator for 2 and 3, I know that would be 6. So if I multiply the first one by 2 on the top and the bottom and the second one by 3, so my fractions are changing to 4 over 6, but remember those are equivalent fractions, so 2/3 is the same thing as 4 over 6, minus negative 3 over 6. And then I remember from my integer rules that if I have a negative and a negative back to back like that, what happens is they become positive. So now I have 4 plus 3, which is 7 over 6, and I can't reduce that. I would just leave it as is. You should always reduce your final answers in the end to the lowest possible terms, especially when you're doing the assignments, to input your final answer. Okay, let's just look at one more example with a word problem. Okay, so I have a recipe calls for a 1/3 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of butter, and 2/3 cups of flour. So we want to know just what is the total amount of all those ingredients. So I want to find the total, so I need to add them together. So I have 1/3 plus 1/4 plus 2/3. So first thing again, even if I'm adding more than two fractions together, I need to find a common denominator for all of my fractions. So I have 3's and 4's. I know a common multiple of 3 and 4 would be 12, and that would be my lowest common multiple. So I want to turn all the fractions into something over 12. So I'm going to multiply the first fraction by 4 on the top and the bottom, the second one by 3, and the third one again by 4. Okay, so now my fractions are changing, and I have 4 over 12. They're just changing what they look like, not equivalence-wise. So they are this, so 4 over 12 is the same thing as 1 over 3, plus I have 3 over 12, and then plus 8 over 12. Okay, so if I add those all together, I'll get 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 8 is 15 over 12. So now for this one, you can use your own judgment. So it'll be 15 12 cups of ingredients. But because we're talking about recipes, normally in recipes, they will use mixed numbers to represent the amount of ingredients you use. So in this case, you could convert your final answer into a mixed number. So if I were to do that, I have one group of 12 coming out of 15, and then I'll have 3 out of 12 left. Okay, and then I can reduce that fraction part, 3 over 12. I can divide both the top and the bottom of the fraction by 3. So I get 1 and 1/4. Okay, so 1 and 1/4 cups of ingredients in total. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Good luck with the assignments.